that if you took a big stadium somewhere on the planet and you put a line down the middle of the stadium, like a football stadium or soccer field, and you put all the silver in the world that's owned on one side, and you put all the paper claims on the other side, they would not match.
I just take this conversation to kind of current events. When we spoke last of all, last time it was around the time of the silver squeeze, and as I said, we saw silver pop up to over $30 an ounce, and we were quite confident that during that conversation that we had, that 2021 was going to continue to be a good year for silver. It turned out not to be the case. What do you see on the horizon that might suggest that 2022 is going to be silver's year?
Well, I think all the demands that we just already talked about will be it. So there'll be increased demand because the other market's not doing as well. But I really think there's a couple key factors here. I mean, if you look at the Wall Street silver right in that time frame, I think just before, there was a lot of talk about allocated and unallocated accounts. And this was the meme in the silver market for, I'd say, 2 months, maybe 3 at the most, where people that had unallocated accounts were urged to go to allocated. And that was something that I think had an effect on the silver market.
Hmm.
And now I think the theme for 2022 is custodians. Where is your silver and is it there? I did a weekly perspective, which I've been doing for, a couple of years, Dave, as you may or may not know. And I usually comment on the general economy, and I try to keep these things around 15 minutes, kind of a real quick briefing of the high points of the financial markets. I usually have something to say about the precious metals at the end. And one of the things I've been bringing to the attention of people that are new, and it could be old, but the newer investors, is a lawsuit with Morgan Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
And in that lawsuit, there was an investor that wanted to see the silver, and they just said, no, you can't. Well, it turned out that Morgan Stanley was not only charging investors for buying silver, they never bought any, and they were also charging for storing silver, and they didn't have a vault. And I think in that egregious a situation that they should be banned from ever participating in the silver market, but that's not what happened. What happened was that they were given a fine and life goes on. What was interesting is what they talked about in their, I would say appeal, but in their idea about the market. And what they said was that, and this is from Coin Week, so I can cite the source. Is this totally accurate or not? I don't know. I'll give you the source. Coin Week said that Morgan Stanley indicated that this was actually standard practice in the industry. So the problem that I've got is, where is the silver? I mean, if we look at all of the demand that's in the futures market and add up the cost to hold an account, which is about 1/5 of the price of a full contract, and multiply that by how many contracts they are, to see how much cash is in the market at all times. And it's rather substantive. And if you take that through all the years, you've got to figure that some of those people get disgusted with getting, taken in the futures market and go to physical. So my contention, and I can't prove the numbers, I haven't really dove in yet, is there's probably been enough silver bought by investors that are of substance, meaning they don't have it at home and they have a custodial relationship. And the custodial relationships have two problems. One is the one I just outlined with Morgan Stanley. And the second one is not so much the warehouse receivers in, the COMEX. I mean, all those, I think there's 7 of them now. I think those numbers are valid, but it's the authorized participants that have access to the silver in, let's say, the PSLV or the SLV. They can take that silver and hypothecate it, rehypothecate it. And on top of that, if you read some of the prospectuses and you read them thoroughly, what you'll find is what I call double counting. Now, I can't prove this, but I can prove what the prospectus says. So if you could keep a certificate and it counts as physical, so you could be XYZ custodian and hold the piece of paper that says you own the silver, but it's actually resting in a warehouse or a vault on the COMEX. Well, the COMEX is going to count it as in their vault. You can see that it's public information. In fact, I review it all the time. I usually look at it once per week. But on the same token, that silver that's resting there in the vault could also be counted as part of the pile that is in, let's say, one of these ETFs.
Mm.
Now, that would be double counting. Is that taking place? I suspect it is. Can I prove it? I can prove that the ability to do it is there, yes. Can I prove that it's done? No, not at this time. So I think a lot of it has to do with what I've said for years, and that is there's been enough silver bought in the physical form that's probably enough to squeeze the market or at least push it higher. But a lot of that silver is resting with people that just have a piece of paper that says that they own it. And I'll finish up here in a second, Dave. But for years, I've said that if you took a big stadium somewhere on the planet and you put a line down the middle of the stadium, like a football stadium or soccer field, and you put all the silver in the world that's owned on one side, and you put all the paper claims on the other side, they would not match. And they probably would not match by quite an amount, like 2, 3, 4 times.
And that's obviously a pressure then in the system that is building up. It's increasing and is liable at some stage to trigger an event.
I believe so. I think that if people can really get on board. I mean, I know of one facility that I'm in, so I'm biased. Of course, I can go and look at my silver anytime I want. And they have room for probably 50 million, maybe 70 million ounces of silver. So let's just say, as an example, that some of these people that are not so secure with their counterparty risk decide to move their silver from wherever it is now to that facility. The main thing to do would be to move the silver, not to sell it and rebuy it, although that would be the second choice. But if you started putting pressure on these basically fractional reserve systems that maybe have 1 ounce of physical for every 10 ounces they have claims to, or maybe it's only 3 or 4, but maybe it's 50. I don't know. I doubt it's that high. That could put a lot of pressure just by moving it around. Right now, the way it's done is that the bullion banks have the lion's share of it, at least on paper they do. And they shuffle the stuff back and forth all the time. I mean, if you look at the commitment of traders and you look at the settlements and you look at how much goes in and out of the COMEX, yes, some does go in and out of the COMEX. There's no doubt about that. But really, it's a paper chase for the most part. And
it's exactly, yeah, it's exactly for those reasons that we at Goldcore, we offer a fully allocated, fully segregated metal. And you can, like what you're able to do yourself, go and visit those bars or coins and make sure that your metal is actually there. It's so important. It's fundamentally important if you are going to be a long-term precious metals investor and hold physical metal. You have to be able to do that.
Well, for full disclosure, I have an account with you, and I'm pretty damned careful with who I store with, and you're one that I trust, and I do also recommend you from time to time with the right clients. A lot of people come to me and ask, and of course, I'm very happy to pass business your direction when it's a good fit.
We very much appreciate that, Dave. To take it to current events again, we are seeing inflationary pressures in the US, and we've seen inflation spike up to 7% in the last print, the official number that is. And we're looking at a situation where we're expecting a number of hikes from the Fed this year. There's a strong correlation between stocks and precious metals on the short end when we see situations like this, as in we tend to see a sell-off in metals. Do you expect the same thing to happen this time around?
Yeah, temporarily. I have to say yes, because the probability is so high. Could it be different this time? Could. I doubt it.